It's okay if you haven't seen the film because today's episode is spoiler-free and we focus on craft. Howdy, I'm Jeff Goldsmith and this is the Q&A. My agenda is simple. Each week we plan to bring you in-depth insights into the creative process of storytelling. You know, folks, I am really proud to have gotten this episode together and feel so lucky to have this great panel assembled here today for you. Of course, we're talking about the Sundance 2021 film Mass. And in today's episode, we have debut writer-director Fran Kranz, and we also have actors Jason Isaacs, Martha Plimpton, Ann Dowd, and Birney. And what we're all going to talk about is craft. The only thing you really need to know about the film is that it's two sets of parents sitting down to reconcile the tragic events that befell their children years earlier in high school. I don't want to tell you too much more. But you know, I think the kind of colder you go in, the better, but it's okay if you find out more. You're just not really going to learn too much here. So don't worry, beyond what I just said, you really don't need to know too much else about Mass to enjoy this amazing conversation. So, you know, we did a conversation with everybody together, and then I thought just to put it in the format a little better, for the Q&As, I would get Fran by himself to kind of introduce himself and give history of the project and his writing habits, which we didn't really cover when the whole group was together. So, you know, you should consider this part one of Mass. Mass is an amazing film, by the way. You're going to be hearing a lot about it in 2021, and I highly recommend you jump at the chance to see it when you have a chance finally. So we are going to plan, hopefully, to do a part two, where we could talk about the scenes and be spoiler specific, but that's not what we're getting in here today. You know, the only other thing I could tell you that's really fascinating about this movie that isn't a spoiler is it's immersive because the conversation that these four parents have when they gather together in this room, coming from two different sides of a tragedy that their children were involved with, it happens basically in real time. So you're not missing parts of the conversation. You're seeing it unfold. You're seeing it raw. And I think that's another thing that works so well about this. So there's a lot of great stuff in here. We got so lucky, and I really appreciate these talented folks coming down and spending time chatting about their film with us. So I know you'll dig this episode. And speaking of things to dig, I hope you also check out Backstory Magazine. You could read us over at backstory.net on a desktop or laptop. And of course, you could also read us in our iPad app. We recently published issue 42. I'm quite proud of it. It has so much great exclusive content in it that you could only find within our pages. It features great interviews with storytellers, writers, directors, comic book artists, you know, playwrights. You could even read two different screenplays you can't find anywhere else in the world that are exclusive to us. They're unproduced screenplays. One's by Simon Kinberg for his first movie that he sold. It's never been made. And also Joe Carnahan gave us his script for LA 58, which is also really awesome. And it's a film he's been trying to make for over a decade, and he's getting close to soon, but it's a great quarantine read for right now. I promise you that. You could also test drive us if you've never read us before by going to backstory.net and or in the iPad app. You could read an entire issue of the magazine for free. And if you dig what you read, we really hope you'll consider becoming a subscriber, which will give you access to anything new we print, but also access to our archive. Look, there's a lot of great stuff in there. If you want to subscribe, you could use coupon code SAVE5. That will save you $5 off a subscription, and you could use that at backstory.net. And look, it really means a lot to me for you to consider becoming a subscriber. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, we are going to jump into this interview. Remember, if you want to watch this, you could watch it on the Backstory Magazine YouTube page, which is where I've been putting the Zoomcast. So if you're a podcast listener listening to us in iTunes or Spotify, I just wanted you to be aware that you could watch these interviews also on our YouTube page. But so we are going to start with writer-director Fran Kranz to talk about his creative process and how this project originated and, you know, his writing habits. And then we're going to be joined by the rest of the cast, which includes Jason Isaacs, Martha Plimpton, Ann Dowd, and Birney. And we're going to all talk about their process for making the movie. And so consider this part one, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're starting off with Fran, and then we're going to get to everyone else. I just wanted to give everybody a baseline for you. You know, did you study acting? Where'd you go to school, and when did writing and directing kind of start coming into your path?
Yeah, well, no, I appreciate, taking a second with me. Yeah, I really got into it. I kind of got the bug or whatever in doing theater in high school and college, right? And it was Shakespeare, it was Chekhov, I had a teacher in high school, this guy Ted Walsh, who's kind of famous around Los Angeles because I went to high school. He taught Jake Gyllenhaal, Jason Segel, Maggie Gyllenhaal, so he's kind of this guy. And I was fortunate to grow up there where you get casting directors coming to your plays, and I did a play with the daughter of a producer, Mark Platt. And
oh, wow,
so
yeah.
I'm incredibly fortunate because I have friends, actors that moved to Los Angeles, and it is about who you know. And I sort of had this dumb luck of having connections just around me early on. But it was really kind of classic stuff in theater. And I did, I would do 5 plays a year at college, and I wasn't a theater studies major, but I was passionate about it, and I knew I wanted to get into acting. So I wanted a kind of well-rounded education, but the interest, look, I went off and did not do a play for almost, 10 years after college. I went back to LA because I was home, which is strange thinking back because now it's such a big part of my life. But I think that's sort of reflected in the work,
Well, wait, just interrupt. Where did you study and what did you study?
Well, I was at Yale University, and I was not a theater studies major. Regular undergrad, I was a humanities major, which might sound like sort of BS, but that's their sort of old, classic, well-rounded liberal arts education, and that's really what I was interested in. I knew I was going to be doing plays all year long. I knew what I wanted to do with my life. But I was interested in art history, philosophy, classical history. I wrote about passion plays as a senior thesis. So there was always theater was in there, but I was, I was interested in a lot of things. So I was lucky to have the confidence that I could do what I was going to do after school, but have the luxury to kind of look into things that just sort of fascinated me, that I was interested in.
This will probably be the silliest question you'll be asked on your tour for such a serious movie, but what was your worst audition? What was the audition that still shakes you to this very day?
Man, I have a couple. So one was for Pyro and X-Men. And I was in college, and a friend of mine, I didn't know the X-Men comics, and I was going down, I took the train into New York for this big audition for Pyro. And my friend was like, oh yeah, he's this Australian scientist. And I guess maybe he is in some of the comic books. I don't know. But anyway, and I don't know. I would never normally I don't know why I took that so literally, but I went into this audition with this Australian accent, which probably wasn't very good anyway. And the casting director afterwards said, where are you from? And I was like, Los Angeles. And she goes, oh, I thought I heard an accent. And I go, yeah, well, he's Australian. And then, and she was kind of like, yeah. So, there's no mention of it in the sides or anything. It was very weird. And then I took a retainer into an audition. I was trying to do this really goofy character, and I had a retainer in my mouth. And the casting director was like, can we try it again without the retainer? And I was so confident in my retainer choice that I had nowhere to put it. So there was this terribly awkward moment of me pulling a retainer out and just putting it in my pocket.
I hope you ended the audition with trying to shake their hand with the hand, right. Took the retainer out.
That's so good. No, honestly, I think I sort of blacked out. I don't know. I have no idea how I got out of that room. It was mortifying. But yeah, so that's fine.
A lot of people study writing, and for some people, they read so many scripts or novels. They get such a grasp on fiction. How do you think your training for writing went? What were some of the things that you did to train as a screenwriter? And was Mass your first actual screenplay, or had you had other unproduced screenplays before Mass?
Yeah, I've always dreamed of writing and directing. I have these ideas, but it's really hard, right? Obviously, and I have. I wrote something kind of in college that I look back now and kind of cringe, and then I wrote something as an adult that I completed as a screenplay, but it was this big budget movie with aliens, and I don't think anyone knew what to do with it or take it seriously. And so I started to come down to reality and realize I need to focus on something small, contained, something that I don't need a lot of money for. And I think it all kind of coalesced at once. in reading, after Parkland, I started this obsessive research on the subject, and I would come across these meetings. I always had this long fascination with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, where they brought families in face to face with perpetrators. And it was all about speaking the truth. The truth would grant you amnesty, that it was sharing stories. So I started to realize that that's what it is. I want to make something about a meeting. And so I tried to think of, okay, this is not going to be heightened dialogue. I want to respect and honor what these people go through by making this as realistic as possible, by honoring it with some kind of verisimilitude, some sort of let's make it just like real life, because what these people do is so brave. It's such an accomplishment. And I think that I want to be the subject of the movie, the sort of extraordinary nature of healing and forgiveness. And so I knew I needed to be like writers, the writers that you associate with great naturalism. And I had just worked with this guy in New York, Richard Nelson, who might not be that well known to people in, with the film, watch film and television. He works at the Public Theater a lot, and he's really well known for the Apple plays, the Gabriel plays and the Apple plays, where it's about these families, and it's sort of hyper realistic. They sit around the table. They have dinner on stage. They speak only as loud as they would need to the person in front of them. There's no illusion or presentation for the audience. There's no projecting. There's no cheating out. And it's a strange thing. It's not for everyone. But it's so powerful when it works. It's real life, and you lean into it. And so I tried to emulate him a lot. I even spoke to him throughout the process. I got great notes from him, but he was a writer and a director I thought would be good with this film or this subject matter. So he was someone I tried to emulate. I think there are moments where it does become heightened. And I felt like in Mass, I think some of the language gets a little more poetic at times. And I'm not about to compare myself to Arthur Miller, but, I mean, Death of a Salesman is sort of, it's perfect. It's a perfect play. There's no fat. Miller and Kazan spoke about this concept of emergency speak, where there was such economy to it that everything needed to be said. And I sort of, but yet in Salesman, there's some poetry. There's real poetry in that play. And so I tried, and again, I'm not going to trying to compare myself. That was the goal. That was sort of the guy that I was, wishing I could be like.
Right. I mean, it seems an answer to my question that you were trying to emulate the artists that you love, and essentially you were self-taught to an extent. And what I find so fascinating was, when did you decide that it was going to be this meeting in real time, in which once we're finally in the room, we're in the room, and it is the meeting from beginning to end. You're not miring us down in flashbacks and stuff like that. You cut out a couple times, but I think that's what keeps it so immersive. When did that idea come about, briefly?
I think it's hard, and you might not appreciate this. I feel like I don't want to say names. I'm really sensitive about it. So there was a meeting I came across. I mean, some of the first stuff I read was from Dave Cullen, the journalist Dave Cullen. He wrote the book Columbine, and then Matthew Lisiak's book Newtown. And I would branch off into those, from there, read articles about those shootings. And there was there were meetings like this movie associated with those events, and it was so extraordinary to me, and I was so curious, right, about how they did it, how they got through it. And I sort of, look, I'm not a big social media guy. I'm not, I sort of worry about the trend in big studio films. And I've sort of felt like, this might sound so self-important, but I wanted to do something really different. And I believe that people still have attention spans, and that,
yes.
It was important to me, if the conversation could be compelling enough, that we sit there, that there aren't flashbacks, there aren't the conveniences of film that we're used to that sort of take care of us. And I did not know if it was going to work. I really did not. We had a screening February 24th, 2020. So right before everything shut down. And I was terrified of the thing that scared me most about the screening. I knew it wasn't finished. It was a rough cut, but I did not know if people would sit through it. I worried it would be boring. And after that screening, I knew that that was the least of our problems, that we had accomplished the room being immersive and compelling, even riveting at times, and obviously emotional. So that was always the challenge. And I felt like it was out of respect to the real people. And also I wanted to, again, I was pretentious, but I don't know, it was in my heart. I wanted to remind people that, no, we can do this. Movies can be like this. And you have, it's an accomplishment what these people do. And I kind of wanted it to feel like an accomplishment to sit through. And I know it's sort of an endurance test. And I know
it's really not. Actually,
okay.
like that's one of the things that I hope to be able to get out there to people.
Yeah,
because some of the reviews make it like, oh, like they make it like you're watching Schindler's List or something, and it's like,
yeah,
it's drama, and it's great drama, but the difference is you're not actually seeing the violence like you do in something like Schindler's List, right? Where you're being a traumatized victim. It's the experience of reliving trauma that is difficult for people to handle in your movie, but in a way that's thoughtful and I think endurable, digestible, all the different words you want to use for it. And so I think that works. I think one of your major accomplishments, though, and this must have been really difficult for you, is the aversion of politics. Jason Isaacs' character, and this is still our spoiler-free section, but Jason Isaacs' character at one point leans into that he has had a political life outside that room since the events. Okay. But you don't get into it. And I don't think anybody would have blamed you if you had some politics in there. I think it would have been welcomed. You were writing this right before an election year. You're writing this under the Trump era. So like, it's just fascinating to me that you kept politics out, because it makes it have a broader appeal, because you can't get caught up in people's own subjective political viewpoints. But talk about the difficulties.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a draft where you had a lot more politics?
I'll totally admit it. That section was much longer to start with. It always, the script was bloated once for sure. It needed to be cut. I was always trimming it, and I'm sure people probably still think it could be trimmed. Some people, but even in its longest form, the point of it was that it was not something these people would really talk about, and that they're using it as a way to sort of circle around the more sensitive subject. And if anything, I feel like the character of Richard can see that he can get Jason's character going by poking at this, and that it's almost a safe place to stay in the conversation of politics. But it always ended with one of the parents saying, "Why are we talking about this?" And because it never felt like this is what really mattered. And the section got shorter in the writing drafts, and then it got even shorter in the edit, because it never felt truthful. It always felt like, no. It still would be stopped sooner. They would not let this go on this long. And so like I said, the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was this huge inspiration for me. And this book Desmond Tutu wrote, No Future Without Forgiveness, was something I read back in college and then reread in the researching process. It's this incredibly beautiful but devastating book. And he says at one point, I'm probably butchering it, but it's like forgiveness and reconciliation and reparations are not the normal currency of political discourse. And that this is a different realm, that when we're talking about loss and grief and the sort of the desperation to heal and move forward, it's really not the realm of politics. It becomes much more a spiritual thing. It's something else. And that's what the parents need. And they don't really know how to get there. And they're clearly coached by therapists, but I don't think even those therapists would really know the perfect roadmap, right? No one really does.
Right.
So this, it's a scary place for them. And ironically or strangely, the politics, the staying in that kind of, it's almost like a cocktail party conversation. It's safe, but Martha Plimpton's character is there with a purpose. And so she sort of cuts it short. I don't want to, spoil things, but yeah, it was, believe me, there was a lot more in there at one point.
I would assume there was.
Yeah.
But I think the paring it down, like a lot of writers, they write long and then they're able to go shape it and sculpt it more. And
yeah,
it was clear that you did that really well, because the trace of politics is barely there. Just a few lightning quick questions.
Yeah.
And then we're going to jump into our interview with you and the actors. Just about your creative habit. When you sit down to write, how important is outlining to your process?
With this one, I naively thought I could just sit down and write it. I swear, I had 4 characters in mind, and I thought, hey, conversations, they're not linear. They contradict themselves. They're messy. That's what this needs to be. So I'm just going to go for it and probably, hope for the best that it is all those things, messy and contradictory. And I just petered out very quickly. So it was all about.
So wait, did you then go back to the drawing board and come up with an outline?
Yeah, so I would improvise. I would read things that got me, that were, emotional, sort of agitated me, provoked me, things like that. And I would kind of get in the room with my characters, write it out. And it would last either a half a page or 10 pages, and then I had this jigsaw puzzle of all these pieces that I did not really know how to put together. And I sort of fell back on that idea of, well, now it doesn't need to be linear. So I would sort of take a piece here and take a piece there and see, I'm going to try and improvise a way to connect these pieces. So it was there was not ever a good solid outline. If anything, it was pretty chaotic, but I managed to sort of find the connective tissue, the most truthful connective tissue between moments that I already thought were emotionally honest, trying to sort of connect them and weave a narrative between these pivotal moments that I felt like had to be in there. And then a lot of things got left out, when I felt like, I just don't know how to place this anymore. And it's losing its sort of, integrity, so to speak, in the piece. So I would lose that.
So did you just have a folder of scenes that you would be like, you're not sure where to place it, you'll save it for later? And
yeah, it was a final draft file. So it was, this 150 page mess with, big gaps in between. And it was, I'd print it out to sort of make sense of it. So yes, there was in a sense, but there was never the board. There was never an outline. I'll tell you, the first thing I wrote ever sitting down was the opening. And that pretty much came out of me easily in about a 20-page scene or a 20-page kind of opening. And I just kind of instinctively knew it had to begin with people setting up the meeting, that we have this big mountain to climb. And I want to start from, sea level with ordinary people. If we just meet the parents, we're, halfway up the mountain, so to speak. So I wanted this longer journey.
And it keeps the audience kind of guessing, which is also interesting as well. When you sit down to write, do you give yourself a page count to hit each day, or do you go for a certain amount of time?
No, I try to, especially with having a family and potentially I'm on jobs. Because, I wrote this obviously before the pandemic. It was a bit obsessive. And again, I don't have a lot of experience. Now I feel like I'm probably going to have to carve out time to sort of not, this took a big sacrifice on my personal life, right? Toll, I should say. But no, that was it felt like day and night. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like I said, this was an obsessive process. And it was never about page count, but it would be exhausting. I'll tell you that. I would cry writing a lot of this. And so I had to pull away a lot because I'd be sort of spent, and I'd be like, well, there's nothing really to do now. I just got that out. I had a sort of a notepad. I also used the note on my phone, anything that came to mind. So I just kind of had this sort of, collection of thoughts and ideas and lines and feelings. And then I would kind of come in, but it was hard because it was a lot of putting together a puzzle that it was putting together a jigsaw puzzle. It really was. So it took some time. But I kind of relied on, there was some truth to that. This idea that people don't always know where they're going. I did not want the movie to be clean that way,
How long to get your first draft? How long did it take?
Oh, shoot. I can give you that answer if I can figure it out, because I know I sent it to Reed Birney because I wrote it for him sort of in the fall. I believe there's in August 2018. And so this was, Parkland would have been February 2014. I know Reed had read it. There was a moment I went to Boston in November 2018 because I wanted to see Tom Brady play. I thought he was going to retire. I was a Patriots fan. I am. And so I was in Boston in November when I'd gotten some good set of notes and had rewritten I don't know how to say it, one of the bigger emotional climax of the film, right? And I was in a hotel room in Boston, just kind of like weeping. And that was, but that's when I feel like
you're saying it took a few years for their first draft?
Well, Parkland 2018 is February, and then November 2018. So can you do the math? 9 months. 9 months was after that, it was all whittling down. At that point, it was set. I think before some structural changes took place. And it was a play at that point. The first draft was a screenplay, but it was a play at that point. And so it was, I think, in April or March of 2019 when I said, no, screw it, I'm going to make the movie. And I switched it to a screenplay. But that was easy because I'd always sort of been there. And then it required some changes. Once we got our location, I had to sort of adapt a little bit to that, of course. Yeah.
Well, last question before we join into the other conversation with the actors. What do you do when you get writer's block? How do you handle it when you get to that place where you're not sure where to go? Writers all handle it differently. So if you get writer's block, how do you handle it?
I just experienced this because I'm feeling pressure to have something else, right? And so I just kind of have to walk away and trust that it's there. I feel a little bit of anxiety about not having enough time in my life to come up with or execute and write the things that I feel like are in my head. But you truly walk away. I mean, I just walk away. I know commutes, walking around the block, things to sort of break the exercise up. Don't be stuck in a room with writer's block, leave and mix up the surroundings. And I think it always helps to have something handy nearby to write something down. So much of my script comes from the notes on my phone or like random sheets of paper, so much of it. Yeah.
But Fran, isn't there a danger with that? And I've asked this to a lot of writers that sometimes when you have notes in so many different places, like physical notes in your phone, that it's very difficult to collate. So do you think that searching through notes is part of your subconscious writing process?
For me, for sure. And I don't know if it's, for me personally, I don't know if it's any more difficult to collate than it is to just write in general. I haven't done enough to feel like I've perfected the process for myself. Not at all. I do know I lose stuff because of this. I know that. That's the danger. I had and that is heartbreaking when you feel like the thought will never come back and the record of it is gone. That's heartbreaking. For me, I'm not sure I know any better because it'll happen. A lot of the stuff comes to me when I'm running or exercising because I think I'm exhausted. And so I think that's an emotional place anyway, just being totally exhausted. So that's tough because then I really don't have anything to write on, and so that's always, I feel like I've had some great inspiration running that I don't know if I'll ever have again.
Well, great. Well, I'm glad that we were able to chat one-on-one before the group. Yeah. So thanks for doing that. And obviously we'll reconvene for a part 2 when your film sells and has a distribution date, which I can't wait for as well, because we're still in the middle of Sundance right now.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, you all. I love your movie. Welcome to the cast and the writer-director of Mass. I absolutely loved it at Sundance. So first off, congratulations on this movie because it really is something special.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I've been going to Sundance since 2003. I've never missed a year. I will fully publicly admit that I even planned the birth of my children to not occur during Sundance so that there would never be.
How do you have that power?
I just took a guess, but because I never wanted to miss it. And it was, I'm so in love that the Institute was able to do what they did this year and bring Sundance to the world. And I think the best place to start for you all would be just a favorite Sundance memory. And, let's start with that.
I have so many, but I remember my very first Sundance in the early 90s with a man who became my best friend, Ol Parker. He wrote a film called Loved Up, and we were there, and we were very young and new, and we met this guy, and he was he talked a really good game. He's talking. We thought we'd met the next Scorsese, and he seemed to really want to be friendly with us. And he was saying, "Oh, let's hang out this afternoon. And where are you guys crashing? You got somewhere to crash? I can crash tonight because my condo is up." And we're like, "Yeah, fantastic. You got to come see my. I'll get you tickets to my movie." So we went to see the movie. There were 5 people in the theater, and he was sitting at the back. And within 3 frames, it was clearly one of the worst things that's ever been made. And we sank slowly to the floor in the dark, and we crawled like ninjas so that he wouldn't see us to the fire escape at the side, and made our way out of the theater. I remember that fondly.
Well, that's the beauty of Sundance, right? It's a safe place to fail. Reed, what's a favorite memory of yours?
Well, I've only been once last year, and I had the greatest time because it's late in the day for me, so it was nice to finally be able to get there and see what it was. It was everything I wanted it to be, honestly. But the most fun was getting to see the casts. I had 2 movies there, getting to see the casts again and celebrate the success of these things. 40-year-old version, I don't think I expected would ever turn into the thing it turned into. So
actually, I just want to say shout out to 40-year-old version because Netflix bought it after Sundance last year, and it's a beautiful film.
Yeah.
Beautiful film, and you were fantastic in it.
Thank you.
And for you, the only thing I want to say is I was at your screening at the library for Compliance.
You were?
Everybody was on the floor. The Q&A went off the rails where there was somebody really toxic in the audience, but like Compliance, I'll never forget being in that room and seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, that was astonishing.
Yeah. What was your favorite?
Well, now that you say it, that was extraordinary. I thought, what's going on? I felt bad for that guy in the audience. It's for everybody else here. It triggers people. That's what I want to say.
Really a rough movie.
I don't know what was happening there, but something triggered him. And all I wanted to say is, buddy, stop talking. Don't talk anymore, bud, because you're going to dig a big old hole here, and you're just a little out of you're off your baseline.
Wow.
I just wanted to say that movie was amazing, and you were amazing in it. And there was a toxic guy in the audience. Tell me something positive though. That guy's a negative.
I don't want to see the movie. I want to see the Q&A.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear more. Oh my God. Yeah.
I kind of thought it was a positive. Sorry, Jeff. I mean, the way the cast responded, and the way they kind of spoke up, and I thought, wow, this is what a good movie will produce: real conversation and conflict. Hopefully, not out of its mind, but I found that thrilling and extraordinary.
Yeah, it was a guy who was berating the actor, one of the actresses, for appearing nude and telling her that she was hypocritical or something stupid like that for having nudity in a movie. And it's just like, how do you make it to Utah? Like, how did you get
funny? You know what I thought
get in this theater? And it was just the dumbest thing.
But remember how he was saying, "Man, you're hot." He was like, "Whoa, buddy, you're going in the wrong direction here. Don't speak."
It was all creep factor, but your performance in the movie was absolutely amazing.
I apologize. I've been drinking too much.
Thank you very much.
So Martha, tell me your Sundance favorite experience.
Well, I've only been once, back in 1997 with Eye of God, which was a Tim Blake Nelson film. Oh. It was also just like this one. It was his writing and directing debut in film. And we were there for that. But I don't have any, I remember having my face smashed into a door jamb going into a party.
What? Oh, okay. So it was an accident.
Yeah. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed I enjoyed seeing the movies, and I enjoyed having people see our movie. And actually, Fran actually spoke to Tim before we made this movie. Yeah, because they had a similar sort of. Both of them were very low budget, and so they spoke a little bit about stuff. Mm-hmm. But before that, my real memories of Sundance are the lab. I went to the lab the first year in 1981 when I was 11, and that was awesome.
Wow,
awesome! Wow. Yeah, it was really cool.
Do you remember what you were working on? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. I was working on a movie that Marissa Silver was developing. And and I was young and I was just there by myself.
That's wrong.
My mom didn't go or anything. And this was the early days. Like
Wow.
we were still intense, there wasn't the whole, ski lodges and everything that they have now, but it was really fun. And I remember there was a horse stable there. And I used to go horseback riding and bareback riding with Amy Redford, who was a couple years older than me. And we just go, when we weren't working, we just go off on the horses, just to, up into the mountains. And it was really awesome. But and we watched Downhill Racer. And I remember.
Oh, wow.
I remember it was in a tent. Everything was tents. There weren't any buildings yet. And and we watched Downhill Racer and on a like a real projector, like an old fashioned projector. So that's what I remember.
That's awesome. And just, for our listeners out home, generally the labs are in the summer, just so you don't think she was freezing to death.
Yes. And I've been in fact, I went with Eye of God again to develop that with Tim. So I've been there a few times and it's always fun.
Fran, have you been before? Or is this technically your first time?
Yeah, I went. No, I've never had a movie there, and I went. Sadly, my best memory is sort of stepping inside of that Eccles Theater and feeling what that is like. But obviously, it's sad we couldn't do that with this one in this year. But it was an inspiring moment for sure, because I've wanted to direct something. I've dreamed about doing this for a long, long time. And sort of get into that environment and to sort of have that goal to sort of feel that energy and say, I want to get to this. That was definitely inspiring. Yeah.
One of the things that's always fascinated me is actors have a great ear for dialogue, and I'm surprised a lot more actors do not engage in screenwriting than what we see, or playwriting, of course. I just want to hear from each of you if you've ever kind of dabbled in screenwriting and have been doing something else. I guess we'll start with Martha and go back around.
No, I haven't because we may have an ear for dialogue, but that doesn't mean we have the discipline or the that it takes, really. I think, particularly with a script like this, you don't get dialogue like this very often, if ever. And I think it's not easy. It's really an achievement.
Absolutely.
And I think, I don't want to, it's hard to write something good. And so, no, I have never dabbled, because you can't dabble if you want to do it right and well. Sure. And I think Fran's work here is really very disciplined and very, it's very precise and it's very specific. And it asks a lot of not only us, but also the audience.
Sure.
It makes you have to work a little, but it also invites you in, and that's not easy to do.
Absolutely not. Anne, Reed?
Go ahead, sweetheart.
I have too much respect for writing to think that I could do it. I'm happy to offer alternate lines to playwright.
Yeah.
There are.
But sit down and come up with a plot. The thing that's so thrilling, one of the things that's among a billion things about Fran's thing, is that his incredible attention to human detail and interaction, the way people, the hilarious, great moment at the beginning where Brita Wool's character says, we have to take care of this boy because his family doesn't want him, to be left alone. You would never see that in a regular movie because it's a little part and nobody pays any attention to the little parts, and Fran does. And, those delightful things throughout the script literally take my breath away when I see them, because they're just like, oh my God, that's absolutely right. And what would happen. So.
Anne, have you ever tried your hand?
No, I haven't. But well, first of all, I as Martha said, I can talk the character I come to know. Oh, I'll give you some lines, happy to provide. And if someone says improv, I want to bow down in gratitude, because once you know who you're playing, you can go there and it's a piece of heaven. My husband is a writer and an actor, and I see what he does every morning for 3 hours alone in a room, never misses a day. However, in secret, I'm going to try because I have stories that I want to tell so much.
That's great.
That are personal. Now, the idea of creating an arc for a character or putting the four together in this movie, no idea. That's, and who did Fran know he was so good? I wonder. He's humble, but I wonder, did he know?
Well, we're going to get to him in just a second, but that's awesome to hear that you're going to start dabbling with writing. I'm sure you're going to do great at it. Jason, what have you been working on? Have you considered doing any writing?
I've written dialogue a lot. I think we all do, whether it's improv or writing down. When I've been EPing things, I've written scenes, but writing dialogue is not writing. There's two other aspects to writing that are nothing to do with being able to create believable lines. One is dialogue isn't story structure. Story structure is everything. And that's I remember when James Cameron was nominated for dozens of Oscars for Titanic, and there was an outcry because his dialogue was thought to be wooden. And William Goldman came to his defense in Premiere magazine and said, listen, we all know the ship goes down. He creates 12 different storylines we're hooked in. Just the fact that the dialogue's a bit stiff is because he wasn't a good enough director to let the actors be loose a bit. But the story structure is everything. So I don't have. I do have the ability to create dialogue. And the other thing is exactly what Anne and Martha said. I can't sit down for longer than 2 minutes before YouTube modern. Now
I didn't say that, dear.
Sorry, you're right. You didn't. I apologize.
Neither did Martha. There you go.
Disciplined.
Keep going there, buddy.
Fine. It's the discipline. I don't have the discipline to do. I haven't yet. So I love, like everyone did say, I think, I love contributing or improvising or even tinkering and tweaking. But writing is an entirely different thing. It's like saying, I know how to choose drapes and assuming you can build a house.
Fran, you obviously do have the discipline. At what point did you realize you were going to sit down to write this? And for a four-hander that's mostly taking place in one room, how close was it to becoming a play versus a film?
I mean, it was a play for a while. My first draft is a screenplay, and it's somewhere in 2018. And then I switched to theater. It made sense at the time, and I really, really tried to pursue it that way, and ultimately came back to the movie. That's where my heart was, and I kind of got guidance back that way. I also thought I could get it done faster as a film. But as far as writing, I never done anything like this before. I have one other finished screenplay but it's about aliens, and no one took it. So everyone was like, "What is this?"
I love it. Hey, Fran, can we get a title? Can we get a title?
Well, I don't want to tell you the title. Yeah.
Okay.
Darling, are we all in it?
Yes. Yeah.
It's no, but it's in a way, if it is, you don't know it's about aliens for a while, which is kind of like
we do now.
That is hysterical.
Anyway, but look, no, the point is, I didn't. I don't do this a lot, and especially not to completion. I approached it like an actor. I did. Which had problems to it too, and a lot of it was, for lack of a better word, improv. That I had sort of I kind of got a sense of the four people, who they were, but it was a lot more emotional intelligence than they were sort of three-dimensional, fully realized characters, and that became a thing when the actors got involved, because they I felt like had to bring them fully to life in a way that was maybe more work than it normally is. That I sort of I kind of, like, for instance, there's a scene where they share photos, and I knew who my four people were, and I just sat down to write that scene, and I found myself as Martha's character Gail getting so angry with the exercise that she decides to take it in a direction that could be hurtful. And this was something that was just coming out of me in the writing of it. I had no idea how the scene was going to go. I had just read about meetings like this taking place where photographs are shared. And I thought, God, that's seems unbelievable to me. So I'm going to try and exercise. I'm going to play around with that. So I approached it that way. And I think once I met the actors, it was as if I was playing a part that I was now turning over or giving up to someone else. And it was a little scary. I remember, Martha mentioned how I talked to Tim Blake Nelson. That came about after actually I had talked with Jason. And Jason was the first. Jason scared the hell out of me because he had so many ideas. And I realized, oh God, this is what it's going to be like. This is what's going to happen when you actually give this to a great actor. You know, you're going to have to answer for this. And I had, you know, there were problems with the script. You know, we weren't all the way there. We weren't where we finished, obviously. So speaking with Tim Blake Nelson, thank you, Martha. It was a big deal because I had to sort of find my confidence, and there was more work that I had to do as a sort of fully realized project, you know.
Something I've always found fascinating is that actors are the avatars through which the story flows. But there's always an interesting part in the feedback loop when it comes to actors doing their homework and preparing for their roles. And I'm curious how much engineering there was for each of you as actors with your backstories, because obviously Fran comes from an acting background, and that's why he was able to create these beautifully three-dimensional characters to share their pain in this one room. But I'm curious for each of the actors, and again, I'm not calling it writing. I'm really just talking about character building. What was your homework like off screen? Jason, starting with you.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. Everything for me about Martha and I, our characters, Jay and Gail, walking into the room is about everything that's happened before they get there. Fran's writing took care of what happened in the room, and that's to do with playing it and, you know, the normal process. But it only came to life if we could build in ourselves a history, you know, an emotional history, but also intellectually we had to understand, you know, who started therapy, what, you know, do we sleep in the same room? What do we argue about? What is our plan for this room? What have we promised each other we're not going to say? What have we promised each other we are going to say? And if we could agree on that landscape and then build it so we could feel it, not just think it, then we could just get there and let it all go and let the room and the occasion take us. So a lot of it for me was talking with Martha and trying to agree, sometimes failing to agree, which is exactly what happens in my marriage. You go, well, we said we'd do this. And you go, that's not what I said. You said this. And so it was building our history and our different history. We don't have the same history. We think different things. We want different things. We're burying different secrets.
Sometimes actors don't share their histories with their fellow actors on screen, but it seems like it's key to do that here. So that's
the couple. We've arrived as a couple. You know, this is a spoiler-free podcast, but, you know, I think anyone listening to it will know that it's about two couples who arrive to try and find something. I don't know, healing, forgiveness, trying to move beyond the horribly fucked up and toxic state that they're in. And so we needed to know what that state was. So that for me, that was the background work I had to do, mostly with Martha.
Reed.
Well, we had a couple of days of rehearsal in New York, and we got to ask a lot of questions and get to know each other. And a lot of the backstory was discussed in those couple of days. The only real research I did was I read Adam Lanza's dad's article about being the father of a school shooter, which was incredibly painful and informative, just about the state of mind. And it was also several years after, so it was helpful in that respect. And I think a lot of that article sort of inspired Fran about Richard, my character. So that was useful. But it all was in the script for me, really, and sitting down with these other people to create this world, with the five of us creating this world. It really didn't involve much excavating at all. It just, if you just let the script come through you, it was right there.
Anne.
I like everything my fellow cast members have said. I did read, forgive me, her Columbine.
Sue Klebold's Mother's Reckoning, right?
Exactly, that Fran suggested. And I just found it extremely helpful, because how does a mother ever come to deal with that? Not only the loss of her child, but that he did what he did. That was helpful. But then then I just thought, that's enough now. The text was, as has just been said, had everything, and the trust we had in one another to let go of the controls, let go, and know that whatever we had to offer was going to be enough. That sounds simple, but that's pretty significant, I think.
We also shot it chronologically, starting at the beginning, in the room through the end. So like the characters, we eased into it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I was going to cover that. That's great, Martha. Your prep and sharing it with Jason.
Well, I like what everyone said, and I think we all. I think the really good thing is that we all sort of had a similar approach, which was that we sat down with the script. We did table work for a couple of days, which was very helpful. But I think we got through the script maybe once because it was so intricate, you know. We would start talking about a moment and then we would veer off into a personal story about ourselves. And we talked a lot and we built a lot of trust, as Anne says. And we built a rapport. So when we got there, we were when we actually finally got to Idaho, we were very close.
Yes,
we were very close.
True. And we were all scared.
We were ready to go.
Yeah, we were all scared. That's a good point.
And
Anne.
we were all scared
terrified.
too, you know, because we had all this dialogue. We had to learn. But we were all
Terrified,
in the same boat, you know. We were all there together. And so it really helped. I didn't do any sort of research at all because I felt that I just didn't want to try and approximate. I don't think I can. I don't think it's possible to approximate someone else's experience like this. It's too unimaginable. And I think if I had had that in my head, it would have somehow alienated me from it in a way. And so I didn't want to do that. I just wanted the script to be my guide through this and the character. And she remained a mystery to me, even till the end. I don't know how to describe it. I think Fran's trust in us was really great and a real luxury. And I thank him for that. Yeah. Because you know, and I didn't feel like I had to solve this thing. I just had to feel it. I just had to be in it. And which was, you know, incredibly hard, but then really lovely too, you know, really lovely.
It's no surprise. Great writing gives you a character that's driven by forces they don't understand. So we didn't have to understand us. We had to know what they were thinking and what they were feeling, but they're actually driven by things that the audience might begin to understand about them, but they don't know about themselves. Certainly not before the story begins.
I mean, like, Fran, you're the wizard behind the curtain. You're an actor, so you understand what it's going to take for your cast to prepare. You chose a perfect cast. What was something that surprised you with all the planning and living in the heads of these characters, that once you started doing these read-throughs, and if I just want to make sure I understand it, are you saying your rehearsal process was really only a couple days of table reads?
You know, yes, it's true.
It was away from the shoot, though. Remember, I had to go to Australia and New Zealand and come back.
Yeah, I think we sort of had 2 days in about 2 hours. You remember, someone had to get on a plane, and so we had this funny extra kind of not even a half day that was supposed to be a run through. And again, I think it sort of fell apart into us talking and, you know, all that. But that's great. And you know, you guys are saying it. You're touching on it, or someone said it really well. That, you know, and this is kind of how I work as an actor, and I'm not nearly as good as these four, but for me, I felt like it's not necessary for me to tell you exactly why I'm doing something as long as I can feel it. And I have sometimes trouble articulating my choices and as an actor, and the same goes for the writing, because I think I wrote it sort of in that capacity, like I was talking about earlier. And so it was both amazing and still kind of a mystery to me that, you know, there were things that I did not understand about it, that this thing that I worked on, that I still don't totally understand. And it took other actors to maybe explain it for me or take it from me. And they might not even, as I think someone just alluded to, fully understand it themselves. It's just about feeling it. And I felt it in the writing. They clearly felt it in the performance. And ultimately, I think that's all that matters. And especially with subject matter like this, it's, you know, in the darker aspect of it, it's the unthinkable, it's the unimaginable. These are really abstract, almost feelings. These intense emotions, and loss and grief. They're sort of abstract. And then the same goes for reconciliation, forgiveness. These are sort of things that happen in a kind of spiritual realm, you know, which is sort of the instinct to put it in a church, you know, to put it in a house of worship, right? And you know, I was raised, you know, Christian, so that just was familiar to me. I had that background in me, but it was always important. There was a spirituality to the movie, you know, that God was just kind of around the corner, you know, because I do think these are theological, spiritual ideas, and so that element of mystery sort of still remains, where I think in the writing and the performance and even the final cut, there's parts of it that I just say, I don't know, don't ask me, you know.
Yeah.
And that is surprising, you know.
Ooh, hey, I'm jumping in really quick to remind you to check out my passion project, Backstory Magazine. You could read us on a desktop or laptop or through the iPad app, Backstory. And look, you know, we have a free issue in case you've never read us before. So I hope you check that out. We're filled with so many great interviews with writers, directors, producers, actors, comic book artists, novelists, playwrights. And so storytelling is our game. And so I hope you'll check out the latest issue of Backstory Magazine, issue 42. There's so much great stuff in it. And, you know, you could test drive us. You could read a free issue on our website or through the iPad app. And if you like what you read, I hope you'll subscribe, and you could use discount coupon code SAVE5. That's SAVE and the number 5. And that'll save you $5 off a 1-year subscription over at backstory.net. And this latest issue has so much exclusive content in it. We have the original screenplay that Simon Kinberg sold to start his career that's never been produced, along with an interview with Simon. We also have Joe Carnahan giving us a screenplay for LA 58, which is a project he's been working on for a decade that he's getting really close to making, but it's just a great read. And he was happy to share it with us, along with some storyboards and concept art. So there's a lot of great stuff in issue 42 that I really hope you explore. And you could see our table of contents at backstory.net as well. So look, it would really mean a lot to me to have you as a subscriber. So thanks for considering. But now, without any further ado, let's get back into our chat with writer-director Fran Kranz and the cast, Jason Isaacs, Martha Plimpton, Ann Dowd, and Reed Birney, to discuss their latest film, Mass. You know, I know we hit our 25 minutes. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Jason mentioned the possibility of staying longer. We will definitely have a scheduled part 2 if you guys want to stay longer. I have some.
I'm okay to stay for a little bit longer.
Okay,
I have to leave around 11:30. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
This is an interesting thing in which I've always wondered about this, and of course, an actor writing a script like this is going to be really revealing. I know everybody does it differently, but some screenplays have the words "a tear drips down her face," right? And it's an indication, and it's a marker of a moment to cry. When you're dealing with emotionally charged material like this, I could see unscripted tears occurring. And then it becomes a matter of, it's good that you were shooting in order, so you could obviously cover that. How many cameras are you using? And did you script out moments like that? Because your script is such a beautiful four-hander in which there is a climax moment for each character, internally and externally, I would actually say. And I'm just curious if, when it comes to tears and crying, is that something that you mark on the page, or just something as a writer director you're expecting to capture?
I don't know. You guys should all talk about this, but I know as an actor, and I think all of these guys did it. You hate it when there's that parenthetical. Like you don't tell me how to do it. You know, right. I get, and it's, so I know I can kind of remember moments with all of these guys where can I not do that or this, and which was great. And I wanted them to do that. It's funny. There was a point where I was told, as it was really becoming a film, that I had to have more of those action statements, that it's just this, it's like 80 pages of dialogue. You can't show this to people. You got to start. And I kind of resented it, but did it. And so I sort of added in these sort of, you know, stage directions, so to speak. I'm not really sure what you define the kind of prose between dialogue and a screenplay. You know, this was, but it always just felt like BS to me. And so, in fact, when people ask to see the script, I'm always tempted to give them some older draft, you know, that doesn't have all that stuff, you know. Even our first AD, you know, had to break it up into scenes for everyone's sanity and the sake of production. But I always hated the fact that it was always just scene 28. Scene 28 was like 80 pages, and I was proud of that. And now it's scene 35, and I'm like, but you know, for editing, we had it was obviously necessary, but and maybe that's something as an actor that I like just having the dialogue. I didn't want to break it all up, but at a certain point, you turn a page and it's just a block of dialogue. That it doesn't look good or whatever. So I had to sort of create this stuff. But anyway, actors, please speak about it. Yeah.
Another thing though that I thought about this morning, I don't think there are any inserts in the movie. Like when we're showing the pictures, we don't cut to the picture.
Yeah, I never wanted to show the pictures. Yeah,
we cut the ribbon when I'm describing the thing.
I don't think the ribbon. I don't think the field is so much of an insert. It's certainly.
No, but I'm just like showing us, like when we're talking about the pictures, no close up of the picture.
And those was something I always said: no flashbacks, no inserts. And it was funny, Ryan. There was a talk at the end of the day because you do lose your way and you get insecure. And there was some talk before we left that church about, should we get some inserts? Like, you don't know. Do you want to just pick this off while you still have the set? And Ryan was like, I will not do it. I will not do it. And I'm so glad he was like, this is not the movie that we talked about making. And he walked off the set. It was great. So I was like, yeah, that's fine.
I think, I was talking with a friend of mine this morning who saw the second screening, the one today. Uh-huh. And she was saying what a triumph it is for acting. Yeah. How rare it is that you have that you don't have a lot of music. There's no flashbacks, as you say. It's a triumph for actors to place the film in our hands, in these four people's hands, and let it be what it is. And also to not, cut to this person talks and then this person talks and then this person talks. The camera moves between us so that you can see people's reactions and how they're noticing the way someone gets up from the table and the way, it's a trusting thing for us actors. And it says that it proves actually that you can do this. It is possible to examine the lives and the truths and the emotional lives of human beings in this way that is not conventional, but by any means, but that is so necessary for us to be able to speak to one another, to be able to, that's what art is for, right?
And I think what you're touching on, Martha, is like the point of the movie is to get these people to sit down at the same table, which is something that we need more of in life. But for the audience, to get them to agree to see this movie and it's come into this
brave of Fran to do that. It's very brave. It's also very disciplined. It takes a lot of discipline. And
sorry, I was just saying to your question about tears. I wouldn't have taken the job if it had told me when to cry, because I can't do that. And it's sometimes scary when scripts say things like that. And yet I found myself, because I trusted Martha and Reed and Anne so much, and and because it was just a very emotional engagement, there were many times tears came, but there would never have been the moments necessarily that Fran might have written them, and where you might expect it when you were writing it. If it had, they didn't come sometimes, or sometimes they did on some takes and not on others. That's the joy of just releasing into the experience of it.
Jason, would you say it was always a surprise to you then, or was there a moment or two that you had inked in your script that only you knew of, that you're like, what, I think it would be appropriate here?
I can't do that. I'm not able to do that. There are people who have a facility and they can do it like they're flexing a muscle or juggling. I'm not in control of those things. And there's a bit where Martha is telling a story and I found myself inconsolable off camera, and there are moments where you might, by the way, there are drafts where you have to put those things in because people are looking to finance a film and you need to hold their hand and take them through the story. Yes. And this person's shouting but then, I remember one particular take of Anne who said, I'm feeling a bit over emotional. Let's just get the first take out of the way. She did this thing where she ripped her heart out and it was just, she fell apart and she went, okay, that was bullshit. Let's do it again properly. And I went, what? And then she did it again completely differently, very matter-of-factly, because she was doing that thing that we do in life, which is focusing on another person. She then focused on Martha's character. And she said, I just need to get out of the way. I would use either of them as examples of magnificent acting, but you should never be planning when you're crying or when you're laughing or when you're shouting ever. That's not proper acting.
So Anne, I'm guessing that there was no moment for you either, because you were the last person that hadn't answered yet.
What I remember about this is that it was clear from the beginning, which is to say, once we began shooting, that the characters, sorry guys if this sounds just insane, had agreed to let us in 100%, and so that they would lead the way. So I was so grateful to Linda for that, because I was afraid of the enormity of the feelings. I remember takes where I couldn't speak, and I thought, I mean, legibly or clearly, is that the word? Clearly, I just couldn't, and I thought, oh my goodness, and I knew she would help me, and that's all I can say. The huge gratitude for her letting us, and all of us. I don't know if the other actors agreed there. But
do you remember, Annie, the first we met each other for 10 minutes in that nasty little room in New York, and we sat down to read the script, and you full on burst into tears, and it was I think it startled all of us, but it also like you were talking about, Linda, it let us all in. It was like, okay, this is going to be big, and the fact that you were willing at a silly table read in a freezing cold room to bring that really gave us all permission to, it sort of set the bar very high.
Thank you for saying such a thing.
Yeah.
It's, and there's, I gotta say, there is just an incredibly fascinating movie of all of the cuts and moments in between takes and stuff. Just editing this thing was just a marvel. Just incredible to see. I mean, these guys really had it. I mean, truly, it's as good as it gets. I can't say it any other way. And the way they were able to slip in and out of it, and the level of emotion, and then the laughter that could happen to sort of the decompressing. I know sometimes just being exhausted, a lot of laughter and fun sort of craziness comes on set from just how ridiculously exhausting it can be. And but to watch all of that, and to watch these guys move through it the way they were able to kind of catch these waves, so to speak, and get back into character. Just incredible. Yeah.
We all sort of worked the same way. None of us was like, you've got to call me by my character's name.
Yeah.
None of that.
Yeah.
Well, actually,
I'm just going to live in the room for the 2 weeks. I'm going to stay in this room. And
But I think when somebody had some bit coming up, which we recognized was when they had to go somewhere big, we would, the kind of laughter and the joking would, we'd leave those people in the corner of the room. We'd give people space. As well, I think. Yeah, you can. I felt you feel all that in sort of putting this movie together. They all have, obviously these extraordinary moments, and it's true. It started really with the rehearsal and the chemistry, the kind of alchemy that happened, and with these four. And I really can't take credit for it. I never could have imagined such a incredible cast, and it's just something magical happens. It's rare, and it just really worked with these four, and had the connection, and the vulnerability and the sort of trust going into it that allowed for these performances. Well, so I want to ask you all one last question, because I know we're running out of time again. But Fran, just before I do, how many cameras were you using? Because it's a classic question, right? 4 people in a room. How do you cover it? And interestingly, to your credit, I do not remember any omniscient point of view, godlike shots in this church, looking down at them a whole bunch of times. I'm so glad you didn't do that. But how many cameras were you running? We had 2. We had 2 for the room. It seemed essential to get 2. We didn't think we could pull it off because we didn't have a lot of time. I think the room was 8 or 9 days. 9 days, but there are moments in the room before it really gets started. So 8 or 9 days. How long was the total shoot? 14. Wow. Yeah. And so, and I know it was insane. With the first, I think 6 days in the room were probably around 10, 12 page days. And then we slowed down significantly. We switched lenses to an anamorphic world, which is so wide we couldn't fit a second camera in. So the last few days were much slower, but that's also when things they go to another place. It's a different place they're in towards the end of the film. It becomes
There's some really emotional moments, and that needed time. So it was interesting, shooting schedule. It's like 10 days, 12 days, 11 days. Then all of a
I
sudden,
don't think we would have
3.
survived if we'd had more time. I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
Thank God it was only 9 days because,
Oh, sorry. This is so trivial. You're going to say, really? You're wasting my time. I became obsessed with hiding things on Reed. I don't know what happened. I couldn't get there fast enough. We'd be in the green room with everybody, the green room meaning a bench in a hallway. And I would say, I'm going to get his phone. And then I would get his phone, I'd hide it, and he would say, he wouldn't even hesitate. All right, give it to me right now.
I'd come off the set, where's my phone? What did you do done with my phone? He was very naughty, and I was going to call SAG and report it.
It was just, I don't know. Okay. Anyway, sorry, Jeff.
There's still time to make that report. Okay. Here's the thing. I just want to say this for all the listeners, because if you saw it at Sundance, great. This needs to be on your radar. And one thing I really want to add is that, yes, we've all read the reviews about it's excruciating drama. It's so tough to watch. I hope that doesn't deter anyone from watching, because to me, the most important thing about this movie is it is a call toward hope. It is a call towards reconciliation. Wow. And although the scene that they're being able to come together for this movie is specific, we could all use reconciliation and forgiveness in our lives. And that's why this movie is so important. And I don't want that lost with people being too scared to watch it because how dramatic it is. You all did your jobs way too well. But I do want to also note for our listeners out there, and I don't know how you're going to answer this, but for some actors, a project with this much weight is, as you just said, hard to live with. And I'm curious what it was like for you to walk away from the set as being these grieving parents under this difficult situation. And was it a shroud that you were able to cast away, or was it affecting you when you were off set as well? And by the way, and since the movie has stopped, is it something that's still with you? So starting with Reed.
I'm going to appear incredibly callow to say the whole thing was joyous from the beginning to the end. It never felt, the work was such a gift, and you never get that kind of a gift. And to be in Idaho, beautiful Idaho, they took such great care of us. We would go out for dinner and laugh and laugh and laugh. I don't think it tortured us. It didn't torture me at all, because I was sort of living my life's dream to get to do something like this. Jason.
Reed is so amazingly shallow. I'm just slightly stunned by that. Because I'm acting in a different accent at the rap party, I suddenly realized I'd been staying in that accent for weeks, and even at the weekends. And I suddenly switched to English, and the three of them felt completely betrayed, like I'd been an undercover cop. They were furious at me. And I was frankly a bit taken aback myself. I wasn't used to this voice coming out of me. Oddly, it didn't weigh on me then, because we used to, as actors, we dive into very dramatic, emotional situations. It's been more recently when I look at the people who seem to be ruining the world. When I've been quite vocal, it's no surprise I was anti the rise of fascism, but anti the rise of the right. And when I find hate in myself, which I've done a lot in lockdown as we panic, and I find hate even for Brexit in Britain, but I find hate for the Charlottesville, and I find hate for racism anyway. The film stays with me there, the possibility of forgiveness. Who are they? I mean, as actors, we're used to empathizing anyway, but trying to find in my heart to understand how people can think like that, be like that. What are their sources of information? What are the things that have happened in their life? The film has stayed with me to remind me to stay human and not demonize other people, no matter how furious I am by their actions.
Anne.
I was just thinking when we finished, remember guys, we sat down and there was a song I wanted to play with us sitting.
Yeah.
Because to me, that was such sacred territory where we were. And here's a secret, not to my cast members. I haven't seen the film because I can't. And not because I'm afraid of it, just because I did it, and I just don't know how you watch that. I just don't know how. So, yeah, it'll stay with me.
You'd be surprised, Dan. You'd be surprised by how positive you feel by the end of it. You really would.
Not that I'm afraid of feeling negative. The experience of shooting it was so profound and beautiful. And one day I will watch it, but it isn't now.
I want to talk to you after you watch it. Fran, I know we're going to lose you and we're going to have you back another time. You answer before Martha and then you can log off.
I mean,
because writing this and especially the research you did, I know writers sometimes when they're in that headspace, it is very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, look, I sort of say this a lot, I feel like, but I spent, 2 years like crying in front of a laptop. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it was like. And the edit was, it's been the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's been the most rewarding for sure. I spoke with Matthew Lisiak recently, who wrote the book Newtown, An American Tragedy, which was one of the things I read. And we had a kind of a moment. He said, he's like, I can hear it. I can hear it in you. He's like, this is really hard. And he told me, maybe I shouldn't share something like this, but he talked about the press tour, and how he doesn't do that work anymore, and so he said some really nice, compassionate things to me that we've lived in this place for a while, and it is hard. It took a toll on my family, on just all aspects of my life, because it's been obsessive with subject matter that's draining, really, really draining and emotional. So I don't know. I've tried to stay really driven and think about, maybe this will be, I'm so glad you said what you said, Jeff, about hope, because I want, all I could ask for is that this is helpful, that there's something hopeful, something healing, something reconciliatory, something positive, and not to say that I know how to do that, but that it can sort of generate conversation. So holding on to that, but I still feel like I'm working. I'm trying not to read any noise and stay focused. Like I have more and more work to do still.
I believe I saw something in the film credits about the Forgiveness Project, and I think that's
a lot of Forgiveness Project, Moms Demand Action. I spoke with I spoke with a lot of people.
That's great.
We'll see, and I gotta go.
Please go. We will reconnect.
But yes, it's so important to me. I'm sensitive to it. I want to do right by people that were affected by these things.
Great. We will reconnect. You go, and then we're going to end with Martha.
Thank you.
Martha, this is a heavy role. I mean, it's a lot to carry around. Some actors can leave it on set, no problem. I'm curious how it was for you with this.
I could leave it on set, and I did. But I think this was a different experience than what that describes. That sort of leave it on set, and then this was an experience that. We were all moving through it together. And so it wasn't a matter of leaving it on set. You know what I mean? It was a matter of processing everything. And we did. And we spent most of our time, as Reed says, after work, going to dinner and with each other.
Just me.
And and drinking that, and laughing. I don't think I've ever had that kind of closeness, that kind of feeling of closeness, like we're in this together. And that won't leave me. I mean, as Anne has said many times, these people are in my life forever now. You'll never be rid of me. But also, there's a part in the movie that always sort of grabs me, and there are many parts of the movie that for everyone, but just for me in particular, there's a part where my character Gail talks about being afraid to let go, being afraid to forgive, because she thinks she'll lose her son, and that part really sticks with me. And watching it again recently, it really moves me because I have that. I have people in my life I need to forgive. And so, so that does, and it resonates with me. It means a lot to me that we got to do that together. And I do think about that. And it has changed me in that way.
The work that you each did in this film is extraordinary.
Thank
both
you.
the homework prep and what you put on the screen. And I thank you for being so vulnerable in these roles, because I hope the movie does some good in the world and brings some people together and some people to consider more forgiveness, reconciliation, and figuring out ways that we could move forward through a gamut of things.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
And Jason, Martha, Reed, thank you so much for your time. And hopefully we'll do a part 2 one of these days.
Thanks,
Great.
Jeff.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
And that's how the Q&A went down. Absolutely so much thanks to Fran Kranz, Jason Isaacs, Martha Plimpton, Ann Dowd, and Reed Birney for being so generous with their time. I'm hoping this is a part 1, and we really think we're going to have a part 2, because there's too much that left on the table that we didn't even touch about the inner dynamics of this film and the story. When Mask comes out, I really hope you see it, because it's just absolutely fantastic. And just thanks again to the guests for being so generous with their time today. You know, if you're looking for fun things to do online, I hope you check out Backstory Magazine over at backstory.net. You can read us on a desktop or laptop or via our iPad app, and you can even test drive us. You can read the free issue and see if you like it. And if you do like it, I hope you use code SAVE5 to save $5 off a subscription. It'll give you access to our current issue and to all of our old stuff as well that we've put in our archive, which is continually growing. And so, look, it would really mean a lot to me, and of course to the fine entertainment journalists, editors, and my art director at Backstory Magazine to get you as a subscriber. So thanks for considering. The Q&A with Jeff Goldsmith podcast is a copyright of Unlikely Films Incorporated in 2021. All rights reserved. Folks, you know, if you want to find me online, you could always reach out to me on Twitter as Yo Goldsmith, or on Instagram as Yo Goldsmith. Or I'm also, of course, running the Backstory Magazine account on Twitter as Backstory_mag. Same account on Instagram as Backstory_mag. I have a Facebook fan page I occasionally use. I'll try and use it a little more in 2021, but those are the easiest ways to get me. You could also drop me a line via email, yogoldsmith@gmail.com. I'm a pretty easy guy to reach. I won't always respond as fast as you might like, but I'm a pretty easy guy to reach. I'm Jeff Goldsmith, the publisher of Backstory Magazine and the host of the Q&A, thanking you for tuning in and telling you to stay out of trouble. Till next week.